$3. A bus terminal toilet. That's where one of the most powerful men in America spent his nights, and nobody knew his name yet. Born February 20th, 1927, in Miami but raised on Cat Island in the Bahamas, with no electricity, no running water, no roads, Sidney Poitier arrived in New York at 16 years old with barely enough money for the journey and barely enough education to read a newspaper. According to IMDb records, an audition director looked at this kid, this desperate teenager with a Bahamian accent and no formal training, and laughed him off the stage. "Stick to washing dishes," the director said. Sidney Theodore Poitier could have quit that day. Instead, he spent 6 months listening to radio announcers. He taught himself to speak. He taught himself to read. 6 months later, he auditioned again at the American Negro Theater. This time, they said yes. But here's what makes his story different. Here's what the world needs to understand about real power. Every role he turned down in those early years, he turned it down on purpose. According to IMDb filmography and his own autobiography, Sidney Poitier refused every role that required him to be someone's servant, someone's stereotype, someone's caricature of what they thought a black man should be. He said no to millions of dollars because he understood something that changed cinema forever. The characters he played would either imprison or liberate an entire generation's imagination. On April 13, 1964, Anne Bancroft handed him the Oscar for Lilies of the Field. Sidney Poitier became the first black man, the first African-American, to win an Academy Award for a leading role. According to History.com and Britannica, this was 25 years after Hattie McDaniel won for playing a slave. Hattie McDaniel had to sit in a segregated section of the theater. Poitier won for playing a man with dignity, a man with agency, a man who couldn't be cut out of the film if it was shown in the South. By 1967, 3 films, To Sir, With Love, Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, and In the Heat of the Night, all hit theaters in the same year. According to Britannica records, Sidney Poitier became the #1 box office star in America, while black Americans were still being denied the right to vote in many states, while they were marching, while they were being attacked, while the system was telling them they were less than human. Sidney Poitier proved on screen every single night that that was a lie. 38 years later, in 2002, another black man stood on that same stage to accept an Academy Award for Best Actor, Denzel Washington. And he looked directly at Sidney Poitier and said the words we all needed to hear. "I'll always be chasing you, Sidney. I'll always be following in your footsteps. There is nothing I would rather do, sir." Here's why that matters. Poitier didn't break down barriers so Sidney could be special. He broke them down so Denzel could exist, so the next generation could stand on shoulders that were strong enough to hold them, so the generation after that could run. Well, from $3 and a bus terminal toilet to carrying an entire people's dignity on his shoulders without ever buckling. From barely being able to read to making history with every frame. From being told to wash dishes, to directing films, serving as Bahamian ambassador to Japan, and receiving the Presidential Medal of Freedom in 2009, the highest civilian honor in the United States. Sidney Poitier died on January 6, 2022, but his legacy is in every black actor who felt like they could say no to degradation. It's in every story that refuses to reduce us to a single dimension. It's in the fact that in 2021, the Academy Museum of Motion Pictures named its entire lobby after him. This is what real power looks like. Not loud, not violent, not demanded, constructed through uncompromising choices, built through refusing to disappear. Sustained by understanding that every single platform, every single role, every single moment is an opportunity to expand what the world thinks is possible. Sidney Poitier showed us that sometimes the most revolutionary act isn't just breaking the ceiling, it's making sure the next generation walks through it as equals, not as exceptions. So here's my question for you. What version of yourself have you been told to shrink into? What washing dishes has someone suggested you settle for? And more importantly, what would change if you refused? Like if you got that. Share this with someone who needs the reminder that dignity isn't negotiable. Follow for more untold stories of the architects who built our freedom, not just with words, but with choices that changed the world.